Niagara. I trust you enjoyed what you've seen so far of the place, and if you haven't, that's not my problem. I can't do anything about it. Now, if you haven't figured it out already, I have a rather dry and scathing sense of humor, so if anybody is easily offended, please raise your hand and I will single you out the most. Okay. There we go. I know my target now. So to start off with, I'm going to tell you how this demonstration is going to work. First, I'm going to make a very long and tedious speech, and some of you are probably going to nod off. That's fine. However, I am going to fire a gun at the end of this speech, so I'd prefer it if you'd stay awake for at least that part. Do we have a deal?
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's go. So to start off with, look at what I'm wearing. Do you think I'm hot?
Yeah.
Oh, why,
yeah.
thank you. Oh, madam, you're too kind.
Oh, you meant, oh, never mind.
So, it actually, all jokes aside, it actually is sweltering in here right now. I'm wearing double-sided wool lined with linen. So that's not exactly the coolest on a summer day. I'm wearing a linen waistcoat underneath this, a linen shirt, linen trousers, long legs of course, wool stockings, tied leather shoes, and a giant leather bucket on my head called a shako. Now this giant leather bucket on my head serves one purpose and one purpose only. Can anybody tell me what it is? And I will give you a hint, it's not to be a bucket. Yes. You in the back.
I'm waiting to get my husband.
Get over here!
I don't think he sees her. What a crew! Protect your head.
Let us evaluate that statement, sir. To protect my head, he says. Well, if I charge head first into the stairwell here, is this going to do anything to cushion my head?
No.
No. The same thing is true of a giant ball of flaming lead that's soaring at you from across the battlefield. Yes? Yes, madam, to make me look taller. Applause for our little
Hey.
wise man.
Then how come the British had helmets?
Helmets?
Yeah, like this thing.
What helmets? I don't recall the British wearing any helmets. In fact, they're wearing the exact same hats as we are. And these, as you can see, are relatively soft. They're made out of leather. So they aren't really going to protect heads. All they're going to do is make you look like a giant. You see, I was 6 feet tall with the hat off. Now I put it on and I'm miraculously 7 feet tall. I would thank you to hold all comments and questions till the end of the demonstration, or you will be shot, sir. I hope he doesn't think I'm serious, by the way. Next. Do you think that this factor of intimidation, making myself look 7 feet tall, worked? Nah, it didn't, because every single soldier from every single army from every single country across the world at this point is wearing the shako just like I am. So everybody is using the exact same trick, or trying to use the exact same trick. Obviously, we all know that each other aren't really 7 feet tall, 8 feet tall, something like that, so we're not really that afraid. So wearing the shako is kind of pointless. So as wearing the shako is kind of pointless, so is talking about it. Let's move on to what you all came to see, shall we? Everybody say hello to my little friend.
Hi.
This side, you have a lot of life. I like you. This side, I have seen more life in boxes 6 feet under the dirt. So, this gun is a musket, not a rifle. Who knows the difference? You, sir.
It has a hammer.
This hammer?
Yeah.
Actually, both muskets and rifles had the hammer at this time period, although that is a good guess.
But it has a different.
Yes, sir. Both muskets and rifles at this time fire only one shot per shot.
Rifles have rifles.
Yes, rifles have rifling.
Oh, let's hear it for this.
Anyway. Anyways, the man is right though. Rifles have rifling. And rifling are little spirals cut into the inside of the barrel to make a bullet spin. When a bullet spins, the bullet goes straight. When a bullet goes straight, you hit what you're aiming at, hopefully. Now, a musket doesn't have any of those spirals on the inside of the barrel, so when you fire the musket ball bounces around on the inside of the barrel. It flies off in any which direction outside the barrel, and you don't hit what you're aiming at. So let's go over this for one quick second. It is so terrible that I could be standing on this flagstone right here, firing 5 shots at that cannon in the center of the grounds, really short distance away, right? 5 shots, pretty decent amount of shots. 1 shot will go straight over the cannon to hit the storehouse behind it. Another shot will go straight through the British flag without me even trying for it. Another shot will probably go over there towards the rock in the middle of the grounds. The 4th shot will bury itself in the ground at my feet, and the 5th shot will either hit the cannon or hit you, madam. Yes, even if I'm aiming over there. But all exaggerations aside, do you think that this gun is a good gun to pick people off with?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I don't know who taught you about aim. But no, it really is not. You see, you can't hit anyone's head when you're aiming at their head and your bullet is flying behind you. You also can't really hide with this gun because 3 out of your 5 senses are alerted to the presence of the musketeer when the gun is fired. Number 1, there is a large column of fire and smoke that you can see. Number 2, there is a gigantic boom that you can hear. And 3, there is this foul sulfur stench that you can smell. So, if the musketeer is hiding behind a line of bushes, first of all, you will look at the bushes and realize A, bushes don't set themselves on fire, B, bushes do not make noise, and C, bushes usually do not smell like sulfur. So you will quickly realize that there's something wrong with that bush, rush over to the bush, bayonet the bush, and next thing you know you have bayoneted the musketeer who was hiding in the bush. Because he has given away his position. For these reasons, we don't bother to hide. And we also don't bother to aim. So what we do is we stand out in the middle of the battlefield, much like this, and we will all stand shoulder to shoulder with each other, maybe 300 guys all lined up in shoulder to shoulder rows. 1 row behind the next row behind the next row. We will all point our very inaccurate guns at the exact same target, and we will all fire at the exact same time. And chances are, out of 300 of us, 1 of us is bound to hit the dang target. Now that's called linear tactics because it was basically based around lines. Now this stopped happening in the Civil War because during the Civil War, guns started becoming rifle. And once you start having very accurate weapons on the battlefield, lining people up like that is not a good idea. They're kind of asking to be killed at that point. So in addition to being very inaccurate, the gun is also very unreliable for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, it's a flintlock gun. So everything revolves around this little stone right here. This stone is called a flint. It's a flint stone. Meet the flint stone. Its name is Fred. Well, enough of that terrible joke. What should happen is when I pull this trigger, this piece of flint should flip forward and hit this piece of steel, which should create a spark, which should fall into the pan, which should ignite the powder in the pan, which should cause a flame, which should go through a little touch hole in the side of the gun, which should ignite the main charge, which should fire the weapon. Now, what word did I say in there a lot?
Should.
Should. How confident do I sound in this gun?
Not.
Not confident. That is because anything can cause this flintlock mechanism not to work. The flint could be too dull, the flint could be too short, the flint could be upside down, the flint could be sideways, it could be too long, the hammer spring could be too tight, the hammer spring could be too loose, the frizzen spring could be too tight, the frizzen spring could be too loose, there couldn't be a flash guard, there could be a flash guard, there couldn't be enough powder in the pan, anything like that. And I haven't even gotten to the black powder problems yet. So now the black powder problems stem from mainly the fact that any type of moisture will cause black powder not to work. So if it's raining outside, the powder gets wet, it turns into black soup, it runs out the gun, I've got nothing to fire. If it's too humid out, today's kind of there, kind of not. There'll be some problems with the powder turning into like this peanut buttery goop that will stick to the inside of my gun, clog up the touch hole in the side of the gun, and I won't be able to fire it. If it's too cold, the spark that the flint makes won't linger around long enough to actually catch anything on fire. If it's too windy, the spark or the powder will blow away. If it's sleeting outside, then everything's too cold, the powder turns to ice, it won't fire because it's made out of ice. Basically, if the gun just gets up on the wrong side of the bed on an anything but perfect day, you are kind of out of luck. So, considering how awful this gun is, why do we use it? Considering that we did have rifles at the time, and the rifles were flintlock and black powder using. The only advantage of a rifle on the surface is its accuracy, so why aren't we using them? It's cheaper. Yes, this thing is cheaper than a rifle. A rifle costs 3 times as much as a musket to produce. So you can equip 3 times as many guys with this. And as we all know from reading our history books and also from reading the news these days, when presented with a choice between the cheap option and the efficient option, the government will always choose the cheap option. Enough of my seditiousness and heresy. There are actually 2 more reasons why we use this gun. Anyone? Bueller. Bueller. That was my disapproval coming out. Excuse me. Anyways, one reason why we use this gun is because it's much faster to load. 15 seconds to load and fire a musket, whereas it takes 60 seconds to load and fire a rifle. 4 times faster with this kind of gun. Next off, a musket can take 60 shots before it needs to be cleaned. A rifle can take 10 shots before it needs to be cleaned. So, once more, the musket wins out over sheer quantity. And that's how we won battles at this time. It wasn't about who could snipe the most people or get the most headshots. It was about who could put the most lead down range the fastest. And when you have a musket, that is the way you're going to win. Now that I've told you how to use the gun, it's time to use the gun. Let me adjust my flint here, make sure everything's working properly. And then we will begin. Alright, we're set, we're in business. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to reach into my cartridge pouch, I'm going to take out a cartridge. This is a cartridge. Now ordinarily there'd be a musket ball at the bottom of this whole thing, but today because there are so many of you, this gun is so inaccurate, and there's a lot of places for a bullet to ricochet, I'm not going to use a musket ball because that would mean one of you living people is not going to be so alive anymore. I'll explain why that's foul later. So I tore open the cartridge with my teeth, and I'm sprinkling a little bit of powder into the pan here. Now it was actually a regulation at the time period that if you wanted to join the army, you had to have 2 teeth in your head. 1 tooth on the top row, 1 tooth on the bottom row directly across from it to tear open the cartridge. You also had to have a minimum of 4 fingers, a thumb and a forefinger on each hand. Thumb and a forefinger on this hand to hold the gun, and a thumb and a forefinger on this hand to pull the trigger. Now, of course, at that point, if you only have 2 teeth in your head and 4 fingers to your name, then join the army because chances are you're not going to be able to do much else. Next thing I'm doing is I'm ramming the paper down. Now, there's a reason for doing that. It's because the musket ball, if I was actually using one, is a much smaller caliber than the barrel itself. So, if I'm firing any degree of downhill, the musket ball will simply roll out the end of my gun when I try and fire it. It's a very comical and embarrassing scene that often gets soldiers beaten for their incompetence. So, in order to avoid such a fate, I would ram down the paper just to give the musket ball a little extra surface area and a little extra wadding so that enough pressure is built up that it fires straight instead of just downhill. Give it a little ram there for good luck. I then return the rammer to its original place in the gun. It is important that I do this too, because if I were to leave my rammer in my gun, I would fire a 3-foot steel javelin towards my enemies, shish kebabbing 3 of them, earning me a medal for my ingenuity, and then getting that medal taken away from me once they realize I can't perform the same trick twice. I need this implement to load and fire my gun every single time I use this weapon, and that is not an exaggeration. Now that my gun is fully loaded, I advise none of you to step in front of it. I'll choose a direction to aim, bring the gun to full cock, it's now completely armed, take aim at my quarry, and on the count of 3, plug your ears. 1, 2, 3, firing. Oh, that was a misfire. What can I say? About 70% of the shots worked even in the old times. The rest of them, the rest of the 30%, not so much. Let's try this again. Anyone even seeing a spark? I hate this weapon.
That's probably what the soldiers
It's a good weapon
said
for
too.
certain kinds of warfare, but I'm not in that certain kinds of warfare right now.
Bayonet?
Whoa! Now you see what kind of difference it makes when I just turn a flint upside down. That's why this gun is so terrible. Now everyone saw that big amount of flash and smoke, right?
Yep.
Oh.
That was big!
No, I only have one cartridge. Now that little flash of smoke and fire, yes, I use the word little because it's only half of a charge. Now imagine that times 2. Now imagine that times 300. You've got an infantry line firing at you. Now imagine that plus 12 cannons on top of it. That's a full battlefield. That's a lot of smoke and a lot of noise. So let's see here. Example, example, example. There's got to be one in the audience somewhere. You, sir, in the back, come forth. Oh, you're perfect. Come out in front. Look at what this man is wearing. Very drab colors here. Nothing against your fashion sense, by the way. Very drab colors here. Very easily blended in with all the smoke. So what's going to happen to him on the middle of the battlefield? You're not going to be able to see him now. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Depends. I like the answer. In fact, it really doesn't depend. Because, let's just say you and I are in the same army, right? They're all our enemies. So you're in the first rank, so I want you to stay right there. Point your very inaccurate weapon at some of them. It doesn't matter where, because they're all in a line. They're all in this gigantic mass. You're going to hit some of them. However, in the middle of this smoke, you can't see him. So you don't know where he's coming from. That's good for him, right?
Oh, no, it's not.
Now consider that I'm back here, and there's a wall of smoke between us. I see all of you, but I can't see my camouflaged friend here. What's going to happen when I point my very inaccurate weapon in that general direction?
He's dead.
Big oops, he's dead. Sir, you may return to your place. I don't actually mean to assassinate.
Oh, great job.
Yeah! Woo! Volunteer!
That's what I like to see. So that's why we wear these bright colors. I'll use you as an example, sir. Step up here for a second. Now, this is why we wear bright colors like this bright red. Look at this man. You could see him from a mile away. Smoke or no smoke, that red will stick out. It's the same thing, I guess, with this blue, although they kind of made a little bit of a mistake. They were supposed to make this bright blue instead of dark blue. Let me take a seat again. It's just a sort of way to say, hey everybody, we are here, we exist, don't shoot us in the back, please. That's why we wear these stupid looking uniforms. I have one last weapon to share with you before I turn you all loose.
The bayonet.
The bayonet! Yes. Now everybody, take warning. Now we enter the scary and disgusting part of the demonstration. If you are very squeamish, I advise you plug your ears because this is about to get really morbid. The bayonet is the most feared and dangerous weapon of the 18th and 19th century for 3 very weird reasons. What makes this thing unique, more so than any axe, sword, knife, or otherwise? Yes, you, sir.
You can put it on your gun and then you can charge.
Well, I can put it on my gun, but the charging I can do with a pike or with an axe or with a sword or anything like that. But there is something special about me fitting this onto my gun. Yes, you, sir.
You can still fire.
Yes, sir. I can still fire through this because, as you can see, I can see you through it. There's a hole in this just big enough for the musket head to fit through. So I can fire a musket ball and all that powder through here, and all that smoke you saw will soak onto the blade. Doesn't sound like it's that bad, but all that smoke will stay on the blade, and it contains everything in black powder. And everything in black powder, now this, I beg you to remember back to when I ripped open the cartridge, how I was spitting and retching in agony. I ate a little bit of black powder there, and I'm about to tell you what's in it. Sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter. Now, you know what sulfur and charcoal are. Charcoal's burnt wood, and sulfur is that yellow rock that smells like rotten eggs and is used in a lot of explosives. Now there's saltpeter, also known as potassium nitrate, very flammable chemical. But it is made at this time by boiling cow's manure in stale urine. How do you think I feel? So, you've got cow manure, stale urine, charcoal, and sulfur on this blade, in addition to all the dirt from the ground that you've been kicking up on the march, in addition to all the rust on your bayonet because you never cleaned your bayonet at this point in time, in addition to, in the heat of battle, the blood from that guy you stabbed 2 seconds ago. Now you've got all that stuff on this blade. What's going to happen when you get stabbed with a blade like this? Infection. And at this time there is no antiseptic, there is no penicillin, there is nothing of that sort. So what's going to happen to you is you're probably going to die of an incurable infection, such as gangrene. At that point, you had better hope that you get stabbed somewhere like in the hand or in the arm, basically anywhere but the chest region. Because when gangrene affects you, it'll cause you to slowly rot away in one area that you basically received the wound in. And at that point, the doctor's going to need to cut that area out. So whether it's an arm, amputate the arm. Stabbed in the leg, amputate the leg. Stabbed in the chest, give him a priest, because it's time to say the last rites. Second reason why this is so dangerous. Anybody?
I have no other clues.
I'll give you a clue. Look at the shape of the blade. It's a triangle. It's three-sided. It doesn't seem like much, but a three-sided blade makes a three-sided wound, and a three-sided wound cannot be stitched up no matter which way you slice it. Excuse the pun. So, basically you can stitch up the sides, but you can't stitch up the little hole in the center that's constantly going to be leaking. Now for the third reason. This thing is razor sharp, who believes me? Volunteer to grab hold of the blade and tug. Alright then. Does the guy have to do everything himself around here? As you can see, I am not bleeding, I am not destroyed or torn apart or anything. This thing is dull as a spoon.
Yay.
Thank you for applauding for the fact that I'm still alive. It's good to know that someone appreciates me. Anyways, basically the thing is dull as a spoon for the simple reason of it hurts more to be stabbed with a dull blade. A sharp blade makes a nice clean cut wound, easily stitched up, easily followed by a needle and thread. A dull blade makes a wound that looks like a jigsaw puzzle. There are edges missing, there are edges curled, there are edges that are asymmetrical, and you can't follow that with a needle and thread. So bundle these three horrible things all together, and you basically end up with a weapon that gives somebody a three-sided, jagged, infected wound that can't be stitched up and can't be healed. I'd say that's pretty much a death sentence on a stick, wouldn't you? So basically, we wouldn't use this as a last resort weapon. We would use this as a preemptive strike weapon to end battles. What we would do is we would wait until we saw the enemy spirit weakening. So if I'm looking over here, say, and all of you are starting to maybe move backwards a few paces or shuffle around a little more in nervousness, that is the time where I'd fix my bayonet and I'd start firing through it. And at that point, the enemy knows what's coming, so they'll start retreating even faster. By the time they're in a full-fledged run, we have lowered our bayonets and are now marching towards them very slowly like this. That sends them a message, and that message is, don't you even think about coming back to this battlefield, because if you do, you are facing this kind of death. Most of them had the sense to run away. 3 types of people, however, did not have the sense to run away, and they were the incredibly brave, the incredibly stupid, and the incredibly slow. Everyone else was gone. So as it ends the battle, it also ends the demonstration. Thank you folks for paying attention to me for so long, and I beg you to stick around.